So, Mr. Clarke, you're MP for Norwich South, and you're formerly Secretary of State for Education and Home Secretary. I'd like to focus on education firstly, and more specifically higher education. You helped push through the higher education bill, which, despite widespread dissatisfaction from backbench Labour MPs, can you tell us a little bit about why you helped push through this bill and the implementation of top-up fees? Can you tell us some of the benefits that young people will see from that in the future?
The most important benefit of the change we made on tuition fees were that there was more investment in universities and therefore better quality university provision. Secondly, that we ended the system that had gone before, that you had to find money before you went to university to go, and the payment only comes after you've graduated now, and there's no prepayment, and then only in accordance with what you have to pay. So that's a better payback system than what existed before. And thirdly, and I think this will take some time to bed in, I hope it will make universities more responsive to the students who are at the end of the day the consumers of their services. The people I know who are at universities are highly variable quality of university provision, and I think that this change will mean that universities have to think harder about the quality of education they give to the students who are there. So I think those are three big changes. It was controversial, as you say, and there are a lot of people who are worried, for example, that people wouldn't apply to university, particularly people from poorer backgrounds wouldn't apply to university. But those fears have proved so far to be unfounded. We'll have to see how things move in the future.
With the implementation of top-up fees, do you think that the UK universities will become more competitive, against other international universities and move higher up the?
To an extent, because they'll have more money to do what they need to do, and there's a lot, particularly when you're talking about the quality of tuition and also the quality of research, money does matter. We're already right towards the top. If you look at the most effective universities in the world, many of them are in Britain, and I hope that will continue to be the case, more improving as we move, and I believe in fact that is what's happening.
And you don't think that some people who assert that we're moving towards a system much like the US where it's more elitist and only those who can afford to go to university will be able to go to university? What do you say to the people who?
I don't think it's right. The US is a completely different system. They don't have any of the traditions of the welfare state that we have in this country. They don't, for example, even have a national health service. Money is much more the ruler in those circumstances. We've established a system which is far more socially progressive than anything they have in the United States. And the truth is, if you've been to university, whether you pay back or not, and the speed at which you pay back depends on whether you have in fact got a well-paying job or not. If you're at university and you don't get a well-paying job, then you don't have to pay back in our system. And that's completely different to what exists in the States.
Okay, and now I want to move on to the topic of sort of misrepresentation of young people. And it's a topic we've covered ourselves about the misrepresentation of young people in the media. I just wanted to ask you about antisocial behaviour orders, or ASBOs as they're more commonly known. Do you think that sometimes they may stigmatise young people, and young people as at the age of 10 even having an ASBO, it stigmatises them to the sense that they feel they have to live up to this reputation, and what with it being publicised in local media and things like that, it's hard for them to sort of break the cycle. So maybe better money would be better spent rehabilitating these people than having ASBOs?
I don't really agree. A tiny proportion of all young people even come close to anything like an antisocial behaviour order. In the city of Norwich, where I live, it really is a very, very small number of people. And I don't think that young people can be criticised generally as being stigmatised as a result of that. There are obviously issues with young people, as you say, as young as 10, whether that's the right thing to do or not, which is in fact why there's a whole range of other sanctions other than the ASBO, which are designed to get the parents, the community, the young person themselves working together to behave in a social way. But I think there is an important message here. I think antisocial behaviour is simply not acceptable, full stop. And it doesn't matter how old you are or whatever your circumstances are, it's not acceptable to make other people's lives a misery. And that's why I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that if you do make other people's lives a misery, and I emphasise it's a very small number of people, that to be required to behave in a way that doesn't, which is what an antisocial behaviour order does. It doesn't say you're in prison or anything of that kind. What it says is behave in a way which is reasonable. And I think that's a reasonable thing for society to say to the individual person.
Sure. And what do you think about the representation of young people in the British media? Do you think they're maybe unfairly represented and these moral panics by the sort of tabloid press are a bit overplayed?
Sometimes that's true, definitely, and I think there are some parts of the media which do exaggerate what really is going on. But I think also young people themselves generally often portray themselves in the most positive of ways because of the way they in fact behave. And there are many examples I know around my city of young people who are outstanding young people in their own area, and that is known and understood. So I don't myself either get in a moral panic about young people or get in a moral panic about the moral panic about young people, if you see what I mean. I think that young people stand up for themselves. They're often, mostly, great contributors to society. That's my experience, that's most people's experience. And if some people go a bit nutty about trying to say all young people are like this, whatever it is, well, it's not the case.
Sure. And finally, I just wanted to move on to a topic about the environment, and we're going to be covering it next month a bit more in detail. And I just wanted to ask you what you think about the looming problem with the environment and the problem that the government has about implementing new measures to combat climate change. Do you think this is going to be a major issue in the years to come, and how do you suggest the government go about implementing taxes, etc., to deal with it?
It's 100% a major problem. I don't think the government is dealing with it as strongly as it needs to. I think it needs focusing on transport, on energy, on food. On transport, it means making those two journeys, the journey from home to school and the journey from home to work, journeys which most people make by foot, on a bike or by public transport rather than by car, essentially reducing car use for those two journeys. For energy, it means massively increasing the effort to make energy efficient in terms of insulation energy saving, and massively increasing the commitment to invest in renewable energies, which is what I think needs to be done, and those are the two things there. And on everything to do with food and waste and that aspect, it requires implementing the recycling in a way that is positive and strong, and trying to ensure that we construct our cities in ways which are fully sustainable. Now, these are big battles, and in each case, because they're all difficult to achieve, and I think we need a lot more energy to do that, and I think actually they will be dominating political issues over the next decade.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Clarke.